Good evening and welcome to our daily devotional reading. Let's begin immediately by turning inward, facing our fears, facing our sorrows, past our dreams, past our hopes, past our pain, deeper and deeper, until we reach that silence within, the great silence of the One. Of which we partake as the many. The true, the good, and the beautiful, as present in each of us, as the lack thereof, or their opposites. What we cultivate is what we become. What we look at is that what we will start to resemble, to imitate. Choose your loves wisely. Pay attention wisely. For now, let's pay attention to the words of Plato. At these words, the followers of Euthydemus, of whom I spoke, like a chorus at the bidding of their director, laughed and cheered. Then, before the youth had time to recover his breath, Dionysodorus cleverly took him in hand and said, "Yes, Cleinias, and when the grammar master dictated anything to you, were they the wise boys or the unlearned who learned the dictation?" "The wise," replied Cleinias. "Then after all, the wise are the learners and not the unlearned. And your last answer to Euthydemus was wrong." Then once more the admirers of the two heroes, in an ecstasy at their wisdom, gave vent to another peal of laughter, while the rest of us were silent and amazed. Euthydemus, observing this, I think the other translation has more perplexed and worried, something like that. Euthydemus, observing this, determined to persevere with the youth, and in order to heighten the effect, went on asking another similar question, which might be compared to the double turn of an expert dancer. "Do those," he said, "who learn what they know or what they do not know?" Again Dionysodorus whispered to me, "That, Socrates, is just another of the same sort." "Good heavens," I said, "and your last question was so good." "Like all the other questions, Socrates," he replied, "inevitable. The same inescapable sort." The other translation reads. "I see the reason," I said, "why you are in such reputation among your disciples." Meanwhile, Cleinias had answered Euthydemus that those who learned learn what they do not know, and he put him through a series of questions the same as before. "Do you know letters?" Let's see if I cannot skip all the way to the end. He assented. All letters? Yes. But when the teacher dictates to you, does he not dictate letters? To this also he assented. Then if you know all letters, he dictates that which you know. This he again was admitted by him. Then said the other, you do not learn that which he dictates, but he only who does not know letters learns. Nay, said Clinias, but I do learn. Then said he, you learn what you know if you know all the letters. He admitted that. Then he said, you were wrong in your answer. The word was hardly out of his mouth when Dionysodorus took up the argument, like a ball which he caught and had another throw at the youth. Clinias, he said, Euthydemus is deceiving you, for tell me now, is not learning acquiring knowledge of that which one learns? Clinias assented. And knowing is having knowledge at the time. He agreed. And not knowing is not having knowledge at the time. He admitted that. And are those who acquire those who have or have not a thing? Those who have not. And have you not admitted that those who do not know are the number of those who have not? He nodded assent. Then those who learn are the class of those who acquire, and not of those who have. He agreed. Then Clinias, he said, those who do not know learn, and those who are not those who know. Euthydemus was proceeding to give the youth a third fall, but I knew that he was in deep water, and therefore, as I wanted to give him a respite lest he should be disheartened, I said to him consolingly, you must not be surprised, Clinias, at the singularity of their mode of speech. This I say because you may not understand what the two strangers are doing with you. They are only initiating you after the manner of the Corybantes in the mysteries. And this answers to the enthronement which, if you have ever been initiated, is, as you will know, accompanied by dancing and sport. And now they are just prancing and dancing about you, and will next proceed to initiate you. Imagine then that you have gone through the first part of a sophistical ritual, which, as Prodicus says, begins with initiation into the correct use of terms. The two foreign gentlemen, perceiving that you did not know, wanted to explain to you that the word to learn has two meanings, and is used first in the sense of acquiring knowledge of some matter of which you previously have no knowledge, and also when you have the knowledge in the sense of receiving this matter, whether something done or spoken by the light of this newly acquired knowledge. The latter is generally called knowing rather than learning, but the word learning is also used. The other one is, the latter is generally called understanding. And you did not see, as they explained to you, that the term is employed of two opposite sorts of men, of those who know and those who do not know. There was a similar trick in the second question, when they asked you whether men learn what they know or what they do not know. These parts of learning are not serious, and therefore I say that the gentlemen are not serious, but are only playing with you. For if a man had all that sort of knowledge that ever was, he would not be at all the wiser. He would only be able to play with men, tripping them up and oversetting them with distinctions of words. He would be like a person who pulls away a stool from someone when he is about to sit down, and then laughs and makes merry at the sight of his friend overturned and laid on his back. And you must regard all that has hitherto passed between you and them as merely play. And in what is to follow, I am certain that they will exhibit to you their serious purpose, and keep their promise. I will show them how. For they promised to give me an example of the oratory philosophy, but I suppose that they wanted to have a game with you first. And now, Euthydemus and Dionysiodorus, I think that we have had enough of this. Will you let me see you explaining to the young man how he is to apply himself to the study of virtue and wisdom? And I will first show you that I conceive to be the nature, what I conceive to be the nature of the task, and what sort of discourse I desire to hear. Discourse. And if I do this in a very inartistic and ridiculous manner, do not laugh at me, for I only venture to improvise before you, because I am eager to hear your wisdom. And I must therefore ask you and your disciples to refrain from laughing. And now, O son of Oxyochus, let me put a question to you. Do not all men desire happiness? The other translation has to do well. And I think the Greek is closer to do well, actually. How can we be happy, or how are we to do so? That is the next question. Shall we not be happy if we have many good things? Oh, I think I skipped some passages. Oh well. He assented. And what things do we esteem good? No solemn sage is required to tell us this, which may be easily answered, for every one will say that wealth is a good. Certainly, he said. And are not health and beauty goods, and other personal gifts? He agreed. Can there be any doubt that good birth, or nobility, and power, and honours in one's own land are good? He assented. And what other goods are there? I said. What do you say of temperance, justice, courage? Do you not verily and indeed think, Clinias, that we shall be more right in ranking them as goods than in not ranking them as goods? For a dispute might possibly arise about this. What then do you say? They are goods, said Clinias. Very well, I said, and where in the company shall we find a place for wisdom? Among the goods or not? Remember, the idea is to persuade a youth that's not necessarily interested in wisdom to become interested in wisdom. Among the goods. And now I said, think whether we have left out any considerable goods. I do not think that we have, said Clinias. Upon recollection, I said, indeed, I am afraid that we have left out the greatest of them all. What is that? He asked. Fortune, Clinias, I replied, which all, even the most foolish, admit to be the greatest of good. Good fortune, so luck. True, he said. On second thoughts, I added. Now, how narrowly, O son of Axiochus, have you and I escaped making a laughing stock of ourselves to the strangers? Why do you say so? Why, because we have already spoken of good fortune and are but repeating ourselves. What do you mean? I mean that there is something ridiculous in again putting forward good fortune, which has a place in the list already, and saying the same thing twice over. He asked what was the meaning of this, and I replied, surely wisdom is good fortune. Even a child may know that. The simple-minded youth was amazed, and observing his surprise, I said to him, do you not know, Clinias, that flute players are most fortunate and successful in performing on the flute? He assented. And are not the scribes most fortunate in writing and reading letters? Certainly. Amid the dangers of the sea again, are any more fortunate on the whole than the wise pilots? None, certainly. And if you were engaged in war, in whose company would you rather take the risk? In company of the wise general or with a foolish one? With the wise one. And if you were ill, whom would you rather have a companion in a dangerous illness? A wise physician or an ignorant one? A wise one. You think, I said, that to act with a wise man is more fortunate than to act with an ignorant one. He assented. Then wisdom always make men fortunate, for by wisdom no man would ever err, and therefore he must act rightly and succeed, or his wisdom would be wisdom no longer. Thus far our scripture of the evening. So we open up with seeing how the two heroes, oops, my one hand's gone. The two heroes, the visiting brothers, the wrestler boxers, turned dialecticians, rhetoricians. I don't think I can call them dialecticians, my apologies. Rhetoricians. Play with the boy in asking him impossible questions, or questions that will lead necessarily to a contradiction, to him contradicting himself. And then Socrates steps in and shows a bit of a more compassionate way in doing the same thing. Only he takes the blame of mistakes on himself, instead of making the crowd laugh at the boy. That they're being thrown around by the two men like a ball. And then Socrates somewhat humbles them in claiming, I'm not sure how they will respond, we will probably see this later in the dialogue, by claiming to think that they must surely be just initiating him. And there is truth in that, potential truth. Initiation by confusion. A type of frame breaking. John speaks a lot of this, and according to John, that's the benefit, or one of the benefits, and I think the main benefit, according to him, I'm not sure. Naturally, he doesn't believe that one can actually gain metaphysical knowledge from psychedelics, but one of the benefits, if not the sole benefit, I can't remember, is that it helps you break the mental frames in your mind. It's a form of frame breaking, of inserting noise, which then leads to aha moments, leads to understanding, to seeing the light, and hence being initiated. The moment you realize not that you should think outside of the box, but that there is no box. That is what the confusion of initiation tries to lead to. It is a harsh but a quick way of learning, of course. Learning, what is learning? Because they play on that. And then Socrates steps in and say, well, you have to distinguish two different types of learning. Learning to gain knowledge you do not have, and learning to deepen knowledge that you do have. And that made me think of Ursula Goodenough, and I spoke of how she says, you build a framework, a coat rack, where you can hang pieces of knowledge. And of course you need to learn the letters first so that you can read words, and then read words so that you can read sentences. And then it becomes a very interesting interplay, because, as John is also prone to show, at a certain point you need to be able to read words to read letters. Because we start to see the bigger picture and don't actually spell out the letters anymore. So building knowledge. Same goes in everything, mathematics, for instance. If you don't have the ground principles, I think if I remember correctly, I'm still to rewatch Folly on Logic, the same goes there. You need to have the ground principles before you can build further. Building your repertoire of knowledge, skill, which brings us to how do you do well? How do you create a life of happiness, a good life? Because the passage that I skipped accidentally was all about Socrates saying, oh well, I don't even have to ask that question, whether all men want happiness, because it is a given. Everyone wants happiness. So how do we achieve happiness? How do we do well? Have a good life? And then he starts by saying through goods, obviously. And he starts with the most superficial goods one can think of. Money, honor, what's the other things? Good looks, health, which is not superficial at all, but basic. And then coming eventually to virtues, courage, temperance, justice. And I see him also incorporating skills when he says the greatest good that you need for a good life is good fortune. And I am on the fence about that, because I do feel that I'm extraordinarily lucky. And so I would say with many people, if not by the grace of God, there goes I. And be grateful above everything else for all I have. But then Socrates seems to say that, well, fortune favors the wise. It is the skilled flute player that seems to have fortune during his performance. The skilled scribe that seems to be fortunate or lucky when it comes to writing and reading. Gary Player, an old South African golfer, is famous for saying, and maybe he quoted someone else, I don't know. I think he quoted someone else, and I think I'm not quoting him wrong. I think he said it something differently. But anyway, it comes down to 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. That a good life is hard work. And maybe it's true. I think we would be wise to act as if it is true when we have the power to do so. To try to enhance our luck, our fortune, through sharpening our skills, through practice, acquiring good habits, learning to be better at the things we're not that good at. And then be grateful and show gratitude when things work out. Because it could have also gone the other way despite our hard work. And have compassion on ourselves when it doesn't work out. Because it does sometimes go the other way for those who do not even try. And at least we tried. At least we tried and didn't give up. May the spirit of Sophia be with you.